Okay, we are live. Welcome to Tamarah's Closet today. I have a very multi-talented guest with me today, and he is an entrepreneurial businessman who has grown two multi-million-dollar businesses. He's a fitness advocate, a pilot, and author. He mentors and coaches people. He's currently the CEO and co-founder of Zenergy Technologies. And he's also won numerous awards over the years, such as the Triad Business Journal's 40 Leaders Under 40 in 2006, two Fast 50 awards from the Triad Business Journal for Zenergy's Accelerated Growth, and Entrepreneur of the Year for 2013 from the Nussbaum Center for Entrepreneurship, just to name a few. He's here with me today actually to talk about his new book out, Flying Colors, which I have here with me. And I happen to be reading this book right now, and I absolutely love it. It's really been very inspirational to me, and it came to me at a time right now that I very much needed that little lift. And so I want to go ahead and welcome Christopher Laney to Tamarah's Closet. Can you still hear me, Christopher?
I hear you very well, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. I know how busy you are, so I'm very excited. I'm just going to jump right into it. I want to know, Chris, if there were any entrepreneurs in your family, or artists, or authors, or in your family history at all.
Yes, yeah, definitely. So my one of my grandfathers, my mom's dad, he had several businesses. From having a nursery in Southern California and San Diego to having this fishing lake everybody came to they paid to fish, and they had these derby things, and it was quite a successful business. And that was in North Carolina when they followed my mom when she moved here with my dad. But as far as authors, there's an interesting story. My great grandfather was sent from Britain to come over and survey the Canadian Northwest Pacific for a railroad. And this is in the days of horseback, and he carried this journal here with him, right? So this is 1870 or something like that. And this thing, it was passed down to me. So great grandfather. But what's incredible to me, this, I guess, 130, 140 years ago, he wrote in this journal, and, it was passed down. And then, but he also did drawings. I guess they're colored pencils, but they're very detailed. So the university, it's pretty cool. The University of Utah found out about the existence of this book, and my grandfather sent it to them, and they actually turned it into a book. It's called Surveying the Canadian Pacific, and his name was R.M. Rylett. So yeah, I mean, his writing got turned into a book. So there is a published author, that preceded me.
Can you still get that book today? Or?
You can. It's more on the secondary market, eBay and thrift books, things like that. But you can still find it. But my dad was a musician, played a lot of bluegrass. Actually, played with Doc Watson, I think. And my youngest son is on a full scholarship to the North Carolina School of the Arts for a piano performance. So
goodness.
He's quite the piano player, and there's an interesting story there. I always knew he had some musical ability. When he had the toys when he was little, he would hit the buttons and it would play a little melody, and he would hum it back, with perfect pitch. And I always thought, I'm going to get this kid piano lessons or music lessons at some point. And I kind of forgot about it. And then when he was around 7 years old, I teach a creative writing class called The Right Motivation. And there was a participant in that class, a woman who was a piano instructor, and she paid for the class and went through it. But afterwards, she said, I'd like to continue paying you to mentor me on my writing. And I'm like, how about we barter? And you teach my son how to play piano, and I'll help you with your writing. And we did that for a year. And he took to it. It took a little while, but he took to it. And then I just continued paying her after that. And I think she taught him for 5, 6, 7 years until he got into Weaver. So quite a few artists in the family.
Oh, wow. Is it good? Okay. How old are they now, both your sons?
I have 3 sons, actually. A stepson, an older son. He's like 31. He's a assistant football coach for Villanova University, and then the middle one is 23, and he works for a staffing company in Raleigh. He graduated from NC State about a little over a year ago. And then the youngest is at North Carolina School of the Arts. Just started his junior year.
Gosh. Well, I've had a lot of young people on my show, and I've interviewed bukus of musicians. So they might be somebody I might want to meet. So that's great. That's great that you have all that talent in your family and your kids too. So what do you remember about when you were a child, like growing up did you ever claim that you wanted to be something, or, when you grew up, or?
Yes, my mom always tells the story that I wanted to be a garbage man. And that's because that's because I wanted to ride on the trucks. The guys would pull up, riding on the back of the trucks back then, right? Now they got the arms that they lift the trash cans up, but back then, the guys would just ride on the back of the trucks, holding on, hop off, pour the garbage into the truck, and then hop back on. And I wanted to do that. But I started writing early. I think I was an early reader, and I remember writing stories in the 2nd grade. I mean, they were short stories. I mean, they felt long to me, but I always claim that I wrote Jurassic Park before was it Michael Crichton? I did. It was probably 70 something. And I wrote this whole story the day the dinosaurs came back. I just did not have the talent to turn it into what he did, right?
Well, that sounds like you were a very curious kid and an entrepreneur then, maybe. So as you got older, like say in high school, was there anything you were leaning towards then, or?
Yes, I had never done any acting, but then I think it was 9th or 10th grade. Somebody recruited me to be the stage manager for The Odd Couple, that play. And I was like, sure, I'll do it. And it was my best friend. He was actually auditioning for Felix, right? And I'm sitting there next to the director and taking notes for him. And I'm listening to everybody read. And I'm like, I can do this. And then I asked him, can I audition? So I auditioned, and I got the part of Oscar. So my best friend and I in high school played Oscar and Felix. So I was, the messy one, and he was the neat one. And that was a very fun experience. And it made me want to go to school for acting. And I got a little bit of a scholarship for kind of acting, writing, and a little bit of music. And I went to college, and also I was on the diving team in college, swimming diving team, but I was a diver. And so when I got to college, I was on the diving team, but I was taking an acting class, and I had to audition for this professor. And so I came in to do my audition, and he was having everybody audition with this young woman. She was a senior, I believe. And I read it, and I guess I was good enough to get into the show because he cast me as one of the shoulders in the show. But unfortunately, that show conflicted with the diving team schedule, so I had to drop out.
Oh, okay.
But I think that was a mistake because years later, I'm watching a movie, and the main woman in the movie, I look at her, I'm like, that's who I read with in the class. Yeah, it was Sandra Bullock.
No kidding.
Yeah. She went to ECU. She was older than me. She was I think she was 3 years older than me or so. But yeah, I read with her for that play. She got a main part in there. She was one of the 3 sisters. But I'm like, obviously I didn't have a diving career later in life. I should have, left the diving team and stayed stayed in that play.
Yeah. Wow. Well, that's pretty amazing. Do you remember like what point you realized you wanted to become an entrepreneur? Do you remember how old you were or?
It was in college, and so in all honesty, my first 2 years in college, I had a little too much fun, enjoyed myself too much, and realized it wasn't working out. I needed to do something to get some discipline. So I joined the military. I joined the Navy. They had this 3-year deal where you get the GI Bill, and I'm like, I'm going to go into the military. I'm going to see the world, and then I'm going to come back and finish college. And and again, like I said, it was a 3-year deal. And I thought, I'll get the discipline. But what was funny is about the second day of boot camp, I had all the discipline I needed to want to go back to college. But the problem was I had 2 years, 11 months, 3 weeks, and 5 days left, which, it was a great experience. And I loved it and made a lot of good friends. But it was funny. I was ready to go back to college once I realized the difference between my life in college and what I was going to be doing in the military. But when I got out, I still worked a little bit. I was working at Sears back when you had commission sales, and I just said at that point, one day I wanted to own my own company. So I would say I was probably about 21.
Yeah. Well, did you think that the military helped you with the discipline or?
Yes.
Okay.
And so when I got out, I was Navy. So when you're underway, there's not really such a thing as a day off necessarily. And, you're working 80, 90 hours a week, maybe more. And so when I got out and came back, and I guess I was 22. I think I was 22. Excuse me. So when I got out and came back, the younger people were complaining about having to take 15, 16 hours of class a week. And I'm like, are you kidding? This is a breeze. So it was so easy when I came back compared to the first time because, I was used to working a lot of hours a week. And, I think that helped also when, in starting a company. You have to be ready to do whatever, whenever, and work a lot of hours, it's just the nice thing about it is once you get the company to a certain size, you've got people working for you and doing a lot of things that you used to do. But when we started the company, I had 2 business partners, still have 2 business partners. And it was great because we all made up for each other's weaknesses. Right.
Yeah.
All had our own strengths, and it was just perfect because one of them was super technical. One of them was very process oriented. Also great at financials, spreadsheet wizard. If I look at a spreadsheet, it makes my stomach hurt. Right. I don't like, spreadsheets and the numbers, but I was the face guy. I was the one going out and selling and calling and building the relationships. And, that really, really worked well.
Right. Well, you have that balance. So I could see you being that because you're very personable. So, do you still hate the paperwork and all that, the numbers, and you still hate the,
Yes.
Yes.
I'll do whatever I have to do. I'm a big believer in, if someone says that's not my job, well, you're never going to be an entrepreneur, I don't think. You got to be willing to do every single job in the company that you're able to do. Some of them, I could never do the technical work that a lot of our technical people do. It's just beyond my ability. But so I'll jump in and do anything I need to do at any time. But, the whole detail and the paperwork and stuff like that is just not my forte.
Right. Well, you've owned and grown 2 multi-million-dollar businesses and had several employees. So how did you learn to become a boss, and was that hard for you at first?
Yeah, you learn by making a bunch of mistakes. And one thing I like to say is what some people call failure, the successful call experience. Right. So, I think there's this too much of a bad connotation sometimes around failure. But you really can't learn anything in life without failing first, right? And if you don't fail at something new, then I'm not sure how hard you're trying. I mean, if you think about it, when the baby's learning to walk, how many times do they fall down? Lots, but we don't berate the babies. We don't tell them they're a failure. We encourage them to get back up. And over time, look, the majority of us that are healthy with no disabilities can walk very well. And so I think there's a stigma that's associated with failure that we need to, get over. Now there's some things you can't fail at. I mean, you don't want to. You don't want a brain surgeon failing at surgery all the time, but that's why we don't let somebody operate as a brain surgeon immediately. They shadow somebody else. But, for those things that, it doesn't really matter if you fail here or there. I mean, that's a learning experience and should be embraced.
Yeah, I agree. I really do. When you, can you share the two companies that you
Yeah.
grew?
So
okay.
Yeah, Zenergy Technologies is the current company I have right now, and it's with two business partners. And am I still there? It looks like I went away for a second.
Yeah, you just went away. I don't know but if you get bumped off the internet, I'll just wait for you to come back on.
Okay, that sounds good. So Zenergy Technologies, and basically what we do is we go into companies. Well, if you've ever been on a website, I'm being a little facetious here, but if you've ever been on a website and something wasn't working right and you got frustrated, I mean, who hasn't had that experience? I mean, that's what we help companies avoid. We help companies in a bunch of different ways to, produce quality websites, quality applications, quality apps on your phone, and, make sure that the user has a good experience with it. And the other company was similar. It was called QuestCon Technologies. And, that one, I was a minority owner. I was executive vice president. And, when one of my first jobs out of school, probably about 2 years out of school, 2 or 3, I met somebody doing something similar as what Zenergy does now. And, just a handful of employees and asked me to come on, take a share, and help him grow it. And there was a few of us helping with that. And we grew that company to about 70 people or so, and then we sold it. And Zenergy, we go up and down because we're project based. We'll hire people for projects, and then after it's over, if we have something, they'll stay, or not, they'll go do something else. But we've grown it to we've had 50 employees at our largest right now. With the economic slowdown, though, it's a little bit lower. There's definitely been a slowdown, but lately we've been seeing a pickup. So I've got my fingers crossed that that's a trend and not a blip.
Yeah, right. There's one question that comes to mind, and this is because in 2000 I opened a big day spa and hair salon, and this was something that I had a fear of owning. How did you learn? Was it hard for you to separate being a boss and a friend and feeling and telling people what to do? That was my biggest struggle.
Yes. And that's real, I think, and a hard thing with a lot of entrepreneurs. And I just never like to tell people what to do. I'm not that bossy person. All right, you do this, you do this. I'm a lot more collaborative, and I want to get people excited to do something. But it's not easy, and sometimes you actually do have to tell. But you have to have. Well, I think the best bosses have empathy, and they could put themselves into other people's shoes, but also when needed can say, hey, I understand where you are, but this is what's important. I need your help to do this. And I think that's what I do mostly, or try to do, is ask for help instead of telling. Ask for help, and that's something. It was a challenge. See, for me, my personality, even though I say I don't want to do paperwork and stuff, but I still early on wanted to do everything, right? I could. And, or let me rephrase that to say what I was good at, I wanted to do those things. It was hard to delegate, hard to let go. But, what I realized that, you can't grow that way. You can't grow doing everything yourself. So the philosophy really had to change in my mind from how am I going to get this done to who am I going to get to help me? And once I realized that, things changed a lot for the better. And again, but it's still wrapped around, um, asking for help from people.
All right. What has been your biggest challenge, through, I guess, as a businessman, getting started? And
the biggest challenge actually is for, when you create a business and you're growing it, as you grow, you're in a place that you've never been before, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just like, okay, what do we do next? And so you have to learn a lot, and you have to, again, that's where the asking for help comes in.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
you go find mentors and you find friends who have been there before. And so it really takes a lot of reaching out, being humble, and going, hey, we've reached a place where I'm not sure what I'm doing because I've never been at this level before, right? So, which is a good
Right.
thing. It's a good problem to have. But, you've got to reach out and ask for help. And again, I think, that was the biggest challenge for me early on is I was afraid to ask for help. I wanted to look like I knew all the answers and knew what was going on, but that's a lot of pressure. And so I'll tell anybody who want to start a business, it's okay to not know, and it's okay to admit, and do your best, but make sure you're trying to figure it out.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Well, what would you say owning and growing both of these businesses taught you the most about yourself?
That I think we're all more resilient and creative than we give ourselves credit for. It can feel difficult to do all this, and sometimes you can be too hard on yourself.
Yeah.
So you just have to trust that, look, you're doing this for a reason. If you love it, if you're passionate about it, and you're doing it for a reason, that if you just keep going and do your best, the answers will come. And I'm gonna drop this blind a little bit because I think the sun's starting to come in here. So
Okay, that's cool.
you let me know if it still looks okay. All right.
It still looks good. Yeah.
Good.
So you mentioned, go ahead. You mentioned a mentor too a minute ago, and that was one of my questions. I don't know if I had this. This is one I added. Have you had a mentor over the years? Someone that you looked up to and went go to advice, and even now,
Definitely. And it's funny. I mean, if you look for them, they appear. If you ever heard the saying, leap and the net will appear. Well, if you need a mentor and you're open to it, they appear. But they come in all forms. For me, it's not just, oh, I look and seek a single person. I mean, I am always, open and ready to receive, good information, true information that comes from whatever source, and something great may come from somebody who's never owned a business, right? But I have a good network of friends that I can reach out, a lot of business owners, and say, hey, have you experienced this before? And asking enough people, and usually one or more have, and they are happy to share information. The majority of the time. So yes, I'm always looking out for a mentor. But I also say this. This is something I haven't written yet, but it's a post that I want to do on my blog at some point, and maybe I've touched on it. But you can also be your own mentor. You can also be your own coach. I mean, I think a lot of times, we ruminate about what should we do, and we don't really ask the question. If we go, I don't know if you've ever noticed this, but this happens a lot to me. I can think about a problem for a long time. I'm just seeing it from one way. And then as soon as I ask somebody, as soon as it becomes tangible and comes out of my mouth and ask, a lot of times the answer comes to me right then before the person even responds. It's a weird dynamic. I don't know if it happens to everybody, but it happens a lot to me. So I've learned to turn it around and go, hey, if somebody came to me with this same question, what would I tell them? And it's amazing when you turn it around like that, that actually the answer or a answer will come to you. And I've been doing a lot more of that lately. And so that's what I mean by kind of being your own mentor. I mean, ask yourself the question first. If somebody, a friend came and asked me this question of something I'm struggling with, what would you tell them? A lot of times there's really good information that comes out of that you just it didn't pop in your head until you asked yourself that question.
Yeah, no, I agree. I have had that happen before. Yeah, and I think you're right. I think sometimes the answer is there. We just have to say it out loud, I think, like you said. So that's good. That's good. I know it's often problematic for people to take that first step toward a big dream. And I'm a big dreamer, and I've never been, I don't know where I got it from. I've never been afraid to take the first step, but I know that's a big problem for people. And what is the first important step for someone? A friend of mine, a millionaire friend of mine in California, always said most people spend all their time getting ready to get ready, And so what is that first step that someone needs to take so they don't forever get their ducks in a row?
That's a really good question, because it is a problem, and I think a lot of people experience it. But I think a lot of people seriously underestimate the power of micro movements. And I talk about micro movements a lot to people, and I did not coin that phrase. There's a woman, she goes by Sark, S-A-R-K, and she's written a lot of creative books. And I really like her books, and they're colorful, and you always get something out of them. But she called them micro movements, but you can just also call them small steps. But I don't think a lot of people don't realize how a lot of micro movements over a period of time, how quickly they compound, how quickly they build, right? So I would say to anybody who wants to, anybody who has a big dream and they want to take a step toward it, is forget about taking big steps toward it. I mean, yeah, if you could do that, go for it. But if for some reason you find yourself reluctant to do that, take small steps toward it. Just make sure you're taking small steps toward it every day. Have yourself, and never underestimate the power of writing down a list. I know people keep it on their phones and computers, but I can't do it because it disappears here. But if I write it on a pad of paper and put it, and I put at the very top, if I didn't get anything else accomplished today, except for one thing, what should it be? And that one thing is, I'm going to make sure that it is a step in the direction of a big dream that I have. Or, I have a lot of dreams, right? And I think a lot of people do. It's not just one. And so, but even if it's only 5 minutes, because what happens so often, we procrastinate, we don't, make progress toward our dream because we just think we have to spend 8 hours doing something. Take 5 minutes, take 10 minutes. And I'm always surprised when I take that philosophy and I'll make myself sit down and do that one thing for 5 minutes, how once I get into it, 20 minutes, an hour has gone by, and I've gotten sucked into it and am enjoying it. So incorporate micro movements into your daily routine, because if you're doing a micro movement or a couple of micro movements toward your dreams every day, you'll be surprised at how quickly they start to roll toward you.
Yeah. No, that's great advice. I think that's great. Well, did you find that when you first started the companies, or the one, especially the one you're now with, was there a lot of fear in there, or getting that or what was your biggest challenge in just getting that started?
We, you know what, there wasn't as much fear because I was in it with two really good friends. My two
Okay.
business partners, Sean and David. And David, I think he and I worked together for 27 years at different companies, and Sean and I worked together for 25. We were both at the previous company together, along with David. So having two people in it with me reduced that fear significantly. But the biggest challenge was, I mean, we each put $1,500 into the company. So started the company with $4,500, and we grew it to multi-million dollars with no debt, and we don't have any debt now. And but we did that by not taking salaries for 10 months. So that was a
Yeah.
little scary, And
Yeah.
but we believed in ourselves, and we knew it was a good decision. And we also started it in a downturn. We started it, put the groundwork together 2009, but officially started 2010. So we were still kind of in the recession, I think. I'm not sure recession, but downturn with the subprime, bubble.
The
And
bubble. Yeah. Uh-huh.
yeah. So it was a little scary, but having people in it with you alleviates a lot of that fear. And I had two really good people I trusted that we took away the burden, a lot of the burden of the fear.
Right. Oh, I'm sure. Well, you've won lots of awards. Is there one in particular that you're most proud of, and why?
Um, Probably, the American Heroes for North Carolina gave me their inaugural Freedom Award, and I think it was 2017, and that was just very, very special. I mean, we've hired quite a few veterans at Zenergy, and I like to help veterans, and I like to help anybody really, but help veterans with the resumes and trying to come out of the military and get into the job force, because it's not easy. A lot of their resumes, when they come out of the military, there's a lot of jargon that business people may not understand. There's a lot of things that they do, and what I've done and helped veterans with is, hey, we have to translate this for the business world. What you're doing, what you did in the military, is very valuable in the business world. But if the business people reading your resume don't understand what it is, or if it's some other area aside from business, it's technical, if they don't understand what it is, I mean, it's just going to be lost on them, right? So, what we do is we translate it, and I give them the language to help them make sure that their experience, the military experience, reads well in a business environment. By doing that, I've seen people who weren't getting any calls for interviews suddenly get calls for interviews. And so that was part of it, that veteran award, the Freedom Award. So that was very special. But, another special award, I think I was fourth grade. There was a writing contest, and I won it, and got my story printed in the newspaper. The unfortunate thing is, I don't know, maybe that newspaper's in my mom's attic somewhere, but I haven't been able to find it since. I really want to find that story because I barely remember what was in it, and I would like to read it again.
Oh, I bet that would be wonderful. I think so. Well, I know. I've looked at your website, and I think a lot like you as far as I've read a lot of personal growth development books and self-help books for many years. And I believe that mindset is crucial when going after a big dream, but also I think fitness are. And I wondered, even though I know there's a lot of out of shape, successful people, but how do you think the mindset and fitness have helped you? Do you think they play? I know mindset does, but fitness too.
It's helped so much. The mind is a muscle. It really is, and you have to train it. And when you first do something new, it doesn't feel good. So it's like going into the gym. If you've never lifted weights and you go into the gym, you see everybody in the gym and they look like they're fit. It's intimidating. It's the same thing if you go out try to do something you've never done before, and you see people doing it well, it's easy to think you're not good at it, right? But the training in the gym, and a lot of it, in the military, well, I was a diver, so we had to work out and do things with that, or the diving was to work out. But, in the military, I was on the ship so much, there wasn't a lot to do but lift weights, so lifted a lot of weights there. But that training and realizing that you can get better at something applies to so many different things in life. And, I just always remind myself if there's something new I'm trying to do and I don't feel comfortable doing it, well, I just need to practice more. So I think that, and that's what working out in the gym is practice, right?
Mm-hmm.
you practice lifting weight, you practice getting better at it, you practice running and stuff. So I think it's crucial. That mindset can help you anywhere. And I think it's important to cultivate it.
Right. Definitely. Do you have time to read a lot still, or?
I try to. It's hard though when you're writing a book. If you're reading a lot, voices tend to creep in, like someone else's voice, and I may be jumping ahead, but let me go ahead and tell this story because I think you talked about asking about like maybe a challenge of writing the book, but I wrote this book. I wrote it the first draft a long time ago. I wrote it in 2009 because when I left QuestCon and before starting Zenergy, I had a year that I'd take off for non-compete. And I'm like, this is the perfect time to write my book. And so this idea I had. And so I, 7 months, 8 months, I had a really good first draft. And then we launched a company. And I thought I'd have plenty of time that, we'd have a slow ramp up. I thought we'd have plenty of time for me to go do a second and third and fourth draft. And, good problem to have. In the moment we launched the company, we won a contract and had to go hire, I think, 6 people or so. And so it was just busy. And I let that book sit for years. And then I pulled it out and did a second draft and let that sit for a while because we were busy again. And so, but when it was ready, I thought it was ready, right? And what I realized, and thank goodness this friend was honest with me. I had a lot of people who liked my blog, and that's all nonfiction. And I've written for a lot of magazines, nonfiction articles. I just wrote an article for International Living magazine, which will be out later this year or early next year for
Awesome.
For a visit to Italy. But so this one person, so a lot of people read drafts of this book and they're like, oh yeah, it's good. But this one person, a good friend of mine who loves my blog and couldn't wait for the blogs to come out, I sent her the manuscript and didn't hear from her for a while, right? And then I'm like, hey, did you get a chance to read that? She's like, yeah, I couldn't really get into it. And I'm like, what? The person who loves my writing couldn't get into it. So, I had to step back and I had to think, okay, why does she really like my nonfiction writing, but she doesn't like my fiction writing? And I went through that book with new eyes, at that point. And it was just like this epiphany. I realized what I'd done wrong is, I always felt writing for nonfiction was natural and it came to me easily. And I would use a very natural conversational style. So whether that was, my blog or for magazine articles, and people really seemed to respond well to them. But I realized when I sat down to write a novel, write something that was fiction, I put my serious hat on and I'm like, okay, I've got to really amp up my game here. And I just overwrote and I tried to write like somebody else and it wasn't me. And after she said that, and I thought about it for a while, it was so clear. And I went through that book again and when I say rewrote, I refined it, but anything that didn't sound like my natural voice, I got rid of it or I changed it. And that book took a quantum leap. And so I think the moral of the story is that you have to trust yourself. You can't, whatever you're doing, whether it's starting a business or whatever, you can't do it the way someone else did necessarily. You can listen to what they did and take pieces you think work with you, but it still has to be something that's authentic to you, right?
Right.
And
Hmm.
my first few drafts of that book was not authentic to me. But once she pointed it out, and thank goodness she did, and that she was honest enough to, once she did that, I changed it, and it took it was such an improvement.
Oh, that's awesome. Wow. I love it. I think I'm almost halfway through now, and
Hmm.
it, I love it. I mean,
Thank you.
but I will talk about that. But I know you've been. I was going to ask you how long you've been writing, but you've been writing for a while because you've got your blog, and you even wrote when you were 4. I think it was fourth
Yes.
grade. Fourth grade.
Yeah. Well, actually,
And
second grade. I was writing in second grade, so it's been a while. But
okay.
I've always like spurts. Write a little bit here, write a little
Yeah.
bit here. I am, now I'm writing. You know, I'm making sure I'm writing every day now because I'm working on the second book, second novel, and I want to write more magazine articles. I'm writing stuff for our company. Um, I'm very happy writing.
Yeah. Good. Good. So what led you to Flying Colors? Was there, because you said you started it in 2000, what year was it?
It's 2009.
It was 2009. Okay.
2009.
I
But I'd had the
mean,
idea I'd had the basics of it, of the idea. Well, let me say this. I, I'd always been interested in flight. And I actually, during that 3 years in the Navy, I looked into getting my pilot's license there. And they were like, yeah, you can, but you'll have to sign up for 6 more years. And I was ready to go back to college. I'm like, I'll get my pilot's
yeah.
license when I get out. And so I went to college, and I kept saying I was going to do it, and I just procrastinated. I didn't do it. Other things were more important. And then 9/11 happened, and it hit me how all those people who perished during 9/11, every single one of them, I'm sure, woke up thinking they had all the time in the world. And so all these
Hmm.
dreams that they had never you know begun, it's too
Hmm.
late then, and it just woke me up. And so I went and signed up for flying lessons shortly after that. I mean, into 2001, I was doing flying lessons, and I started having an idea for the book then. And I knew I was always wanted to write about somebody learning to fly, but I was thinking more of a kind of superhero, learning to fly in a
Uh-huh.
superhero manner.
Yeah.
But when I started taking flying lessons, and it was a little tiny strip here in town, and I just realized how many life lessons there were around learning to fly for real. Right? It's
Yeah.
not just about the plane, and I just realized there was a book there, and then I had to stop for a little while because that's when we sold the company. We sold the company like 2002. I got busy again. I put the flying off, but then later I'm like, I'm going to finish this, and so I got my pilot's license in 2005. But that book was germinating in my head, and but so I knew I wanted to write something about a main character who learns to fly, but he learns much more about life and how to live it. There's a lot of
Hmm.
metaphors in it
Uh-huh.
in terms
Yeah.
of
There's.
soaring in life. But I knew I had to have something to kind of knock the main character out of his ordinary existence, right? So he thinks life is good, everything's happening according to plan. Um, he's about to make a partner in his business, and just thinks, everything's happening the way he wants it. I needed something to kind of knock him out of that existence and make him question life. And, you know, a little bit before we started Zenergy, when we were back at QuestCon, a bunch of us volunteered as lunch buddies at for disadvantaged students at a school in town. And at the end of the school year, they had a volunteer luncheon, and at the end of the luncheon, they gave volunteer of the year award to somebody. And so this gentleman, walks up, accepts the award, and he stood there for a while looking at it, not saying anything. And we were kind of looking around, but all of a sudden he starts to speak, and he said, 6 months ago, an 18-wheeler doing 80 miles per hour totaled my Mercedes with me in it. Um, I was
Wow.
bumped and bruised, but somehow I walked away. And he said, for 2 weeks afterward, I could see a glow around everything that was important in my life. It was around my family. It was around my church. It was around the little league field where I coached my kids. And it was around this school. And I mean, I'm getting goosebumps just, remembering him
Yeah.
talking about that, right? So that stayed with me. It was really impactful. And when I started writing the story and I was looking for something to knock the main character out of his existence, that story came back to me. So I had the main character meet a man like that who'd been through that, and it had experienced a glow, but I gave it a little twist. And added to it that I think helped the story a lot. And so basically, it sets the main character on a mission in life to go find what glows for him.
Yeah. I just love it. I love the whole idea of the book, and I'm right now I'm where Kent's, you're following him into the woods. That's where I am. So
I like to call it, it's like a modern day fairy tale on finding fulfillment. All right.
Yeah.
Parable, fable, fairy tale, whatever you want to call it. But it's, my goal was to make people, when they read it, my number one goal was to write a good story, or something that would entertain you and keep you reading. But what I wanted was, after people, during reading the story and afterward, for them to go, am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing with my life? Am I really doing what makes me glow, what makes me happy, what fulfills me? And I've been so pleased with how many people that have come to me and said, after reading the book, that you really made me think about what I'm doing with my life, and there's some things I want to do differently after reading your book. And that's the biggest compliment I can get.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I just think it's great. And I can't help, from the moment I started it, I can't help but wonder if there is, and I guess there is, a little bit of you and John, the main character. Did you feel like Superman as a kid, and did you have a tree house? Is any of that a little bit about you?
Yeah, definitely. I've read that, the first novel someone writes is always a bit autobiographical. But so, there's a scene in there when he's remembering, the main character's repressed a lot of his memories. His dad died when he was young. It was a little traumatic. And so he's repressed a lot of memories. And one of them is, he used to run around the house with a red towel on the back of his shoulders, pretending to be Superman. And, that's really kind of what spurs his interest in flight. And my mom, I did that quite a bit. And she, back in the days when you still use diaper pins on the cloth diapers, I think my brother, he was into cloth diapers, but I would have my mom take those little pins, the diaper pins, and she would attach the towel, the red towel, on my back so I could run around like Superman. And there's quite a few things in the book. The main character, John, when he shows up to the flight school that's kind of hidden, he kind of stumbles across it. When he first gets there, it's April, so it's dark early, and he gets there a little late, and he's not even sure if it's open, and there's like a storm door with a wooden door open behind it, but everything's dark in there. He can't really see, and he opens the door, and someone says, "Come in," and it startles him, and he comes in, but the flight instructor, Kent, is sitting there in the dark, and John can't figure out why he's in the dark until later when he turns the lights on and realizes, you can't really see outside to the airfield if any plane lands. It's bright inside. It's like a mirror. And that happened to me. I called that flight school, and they were like, "I'll just come by anytime." So I just showed up. It was probably like 8 at night or something, and I didn't think they were open. I opened that door, and the guy's like, "Come in." And it startled me, but I walked in, and there he was sitting in the dark. And,
Really?
The guy, the owner of the owner of the airport, a little different than the main character, Kent. Kent is, we talked about the mentor. That's who Kent is in the book, the flight instructor.
Yeah.
He's that mentor everybody wants. and but he's frustrating because he never really answers the question. He just kind of turns it back on John, and so John has to do a lot of figuring out the stuff.
Right. Well, I like it. I mean, I just it's just that whole scene where you're driving in the dark and the truck that runs you off the road. Maybe I shouldn't say too much, but
yeah.
that was. I'm very
okay
visual. I see a little movie going, and then the whole time John's thinking and talking, I see you. So that's why I asked. I just said, this is Chris.
He's quite a bit younger than me. He's about 42 years younger than me. So
I wondered if you felt sometimes that way in the corporate world, in the business as a businessman.
Yeah. Well, it's there's a lot of people in the corporate world who are their authentic selves, and I think part of our success is that our company, we're very authentic, and we don't try to be something we're not, and and very honest with clients. Like, we don't do that. We don't do this, because if we say we don't do this, then they know. When we say we do this, they can trust us, right? Because we've already said, no, you don't want us for this. Go talk to this other company. But at the same time, I've run into a lot of people who aren't very authentic. I think it's fear, right? They're protecting something, so they're projecting something that may not be so nice. And one of the things that helped me a lot was when that other company bought QuestCon, I was working for the parent company. We kept the name, but I was helping the parent company do what the company we had did. And there was a sales guy, and we were going on a sales call together, and he was a pilot too. And his dad was the CEO when he was growing up. His dad was the CEO of a company that was big into aviation. And this guy was telling me a story about his dad. He's like, well, I asked my dad, I was like, Dad, what do you do? What does the CEO do? And his dad told him, he said, I'm a storyteller, son. It's like, I tell stories to get our employees excited to work for us, and I tell stories to get our customers and prospects excited to buy from us, right? And up until that point, I felt like I was living a double life. Like, I had to hide my artistic side, I had to hide my creative side, that storytelling side, and when I was in the business world, and when I was hanging out with writer friends, that I had to downplay the business side of me, or they wouldn't take me seriously as a writer. And that story helped me so much when I realized this, CEO of a big aviation corporation sees himself as a storyteller, and now it's actually, you see a lot in business and talking about storytelling and the story process. When this happened back in 2000, and it was probably 2006, you didn't hear about it as much then. So that was a big epiphany for me when he said that, and it actually helped me become more my authentic self in business and bring, the best part of my creative side to business, and bring the best part of my business side to the creative side.
No, that's great. I mean, I don't know. I love that part of the book where he is going from the business to, like, when he went and decided to not show up at the meeting and get the jeans, the blue jeans, and that he hadn't had,
Yeah.
I don't know. I just thought that was really great. So can you share a little how you develop the characters and the process? Mainly in case somebody's writing a book or wanting to write a book is watching this, and because obviously I'm just guessing. I've interviewed other authors, and they sometimes I used to do hair for a woman who was an author, and she said, I may have used parts of your personality in a character. Mm-hmm. She said, you would never know who it was, but that kind of thing.
That's very common. I mean, you pluck things from your life, right? You're out there experiencing things, and you hear things. And, I would say for anybody writing a book, or who wants to write a book, I mean, I think too many people focus too much. Oh, I've got to sit down and write, I've got to write the book, and that is definitely true. You have to put the butt in seat time to write the book, and also rewriting is a big part of writing. Because the first draft is almost always bad, and you got to that's your building blocks where you take it to the next level. But I think what a lot of people don't realize is how much of it happens just in your day-to-day routine. Meaning you hear something, you see something, it catches your attention, and you don't know, you don't expect to use it necessarily, but I would tell people to write it down, especially when you hear people talking and you hear somebody say something, it just makes you go, what? Wow, that's interesting. And so I did not coin this term. There's a guy named Gary Weinberg who actually is in the software industry, but he writes, but he calls them field stones, right? So I had always done this. I had always heard snippets of things that interest me, and I would write them down. And don't make the mistake of not writing them down. Anybody who wants to write, because you'll forget them. You will forget them. But if you write them down in your fieldstone notebook, wherever that may be, I'll do it on my phone in the notes section. But I usually have a notebook with me as well. But just anything that catches your interest, that makes you sit up and take attention.
Yeah.
And what happens is, the whole fieldstone metaphor is from when in Pennsylvania, those nice fieldstone walls. They don't go try to find all the stones when they need to build a wall. Those are stones that have been collected for years when they cleared land for a church or for a school or whatever, and people go and grab them. And hundreds of years ago, grab them and build a wall. So you should always be in the process of collecting fieldstones. And I'll give you a really good example of one. I was on a business trip. I was at the hotel waiting for the shuttle to the airport, and I think I was on my laptop. The shuttle was late, and but a man and woman, were sitting not too far away from me, and I could just feel some tension around them. You could tell some people there's something not right, there's some tension, and but they weren't saying anything. And I mean, 10 minutes must have passed, and all of a sudden he turns to him and he goes, "We've been married 2 days, and you've already lost your wedding ring." So, so I'm going, "Ooh, that's a field." I didn't look at them, but that's a fieldstone. I'm writing that one down, and stuff like that. Because I mean, just hearing that, can't you see that being used in a book somewhere?
Oh yeah, sure, yeah.
I mean, so much of a book is conflict and tension and stuff like that. So you always need good things like that. So I would tell people who want to write, to always listen and be receptive for those fieldstones. Write them down, because you never know. The process of writing them down, I think, helps embed them in your head. But you can also just go and look through it. But so many of your characters will pick up those fieldstones, especially the dialogue ones that you write. When you're writing your book, that's what, in my opinion, one of the things that makes your characters real, right? You're in a situation and you pluck something you heard that works perfectly for this scenario, or you may have to modify it a little bit. But that's the biggest piece of advice. I have a lot of advice for people who want to write, but that's a good piece of advice that will help you so much when you actually do sit down to write the book. So even if you can't sit down to write your book right now, the least you could do is gather those fieldstones every day. Listen for those things that pique your attention.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I think that's great. I think that's because that's what I was wondering. It's like and when you keep up with your characters, do you have to write? Do you make a sheet with this character and this one with this to keep up with the storyline, or what you're going to do with that character? See, I think fiction would be very hard to do.
I think some of you writers are different. I mean, you got writers who plot everything out, and they're the plotters, and then you have the pantsers, that write by the seat of their pants. And I was much more the pantser in this. I've got a good friend, John Hart. He's had about 6 books on the New York Times bestseller list, and he calls it Grope and Hope. He writes,
Hope.
grow up in hope. I like that one, but a lot of writers call it pantsers and plotters and pantsers. For me though, it's strange. I can keep it in my head pretty well once I've written it. Um, I'm writing something and I kind of know what that character said, and it all kind of links up together.
Okay.
The one time I did have a few problems was when I had let the book sit for a couple of years and I jumped back into it. And,
Oh, yeah.
I just skimmed parts and I didn't read all of it. And I started writing something. Then I realized, oh, wait, this one scene that I didn't read, I made changes to it and forgot it. And now I got to change this. So, but if I'm in it and I've been there for a while, I can remember it. I don't know why, but I'm pretty good at keeping the thing straight in my head.
Good. Well, once you have the book written and, Flying Colors was written, ready to go, what was your next step? Did you find the editor first or the publisher? And how does that work?
So this is interesting. I mean, I had always envisioned it being traditionally published, and I loved writing it. And when I sat down to start sending query letters out to agents, I sent query letters out to agents, but it's very competitive out there, but I always found myself reluctant. Like I would send a few out where I should have been sending out a ton of them, but I don't know. I found myself dragging my feet on it. And it took me a while to realize what was going on. And actually, I was taking some classes when it hit me. I was taking some coaching classes, how to improve coaching skills and things like that. And we were workshopping some stuff. And I had this epiphany during this coaching class. And what I realized is, I've never, to do something I've wanted to do, like start a business or do whatever, I've never gone and asked somebody permission. Hey, is this idea good enough to go do? Hey, can I get your permission to go do it? And that's what I felt like I was doing with the agents and things like that. And I finally realized, man, I need to publish this thing myself. I need to take all the risk and reap the rewards and do that. Now, what you give up when you do that is, when you get an agent, a lot of them are ex editors at publishing houses. Not all, but some. And so they have really good editing chops, and they can help you take the book up a notch. And then once it gets sold to a publishing house, they have editors that work with you and help take it up a notch. And I thought I wanted that traditional, vetting through the traditional publishing process. But so when I realized if I was sort of self-published it, then I needed to make sure that I would get that some other way. And so what I did is I thought through it, and I was like, okay, I'm going to have a bunch of beta readers. And I think I ended up having about 10. And I'd had some beta readers before, but it was always, here's the whole manuscript. This time, though, I sent, and that's kind of daunting to ask somebody, hey, can you read this whole book and give me feedback? This time I had the idea of, I'm going to give everybody one chapter. And the chapters are fairly short. And I'm like, just give me feedback on this chapter, right? And if you don't want to read the second chapter after that, just let me know. No worries, right? But very easy to read a chapter. But what that did is I got all those chapters back pretty quickly, and I could triangulate and see, okay, there's a problem in this one paragraph. People are stumbling here, or there's something wrong right here. And then as soon as I would incorporate that real time, and then I would send them the second chapter. And I did that throughout the whole book. And those readers helped me pinpoint, things that were wrong with the book. And it was extremely helpful. And then I did, I paid somebody to edit it that I found online. And then, just went through the whole process to self-publish it. And I'm very happy I self-published it.
Oh, that's great. That's great. So when you self-publish it, what does that involve? You just take it to the printers, you do all that yourself, and then you circulate it all yourself, or did you call different?
Yeah, good question. It's there's a lot involved. There's a lot involved here,
okay.
But so you have to go through the editing process, have somebody proofread it just to make sure you got everything. I mean, I felt really good with the edits I was getting from everybody and what I was doing to refine it. And then I did pay a proofreader to get it that I found, to go through it that I found online. Then you have to get somebody to do the interior formatting. I found somebody else online that I was very happy with to do that. But the cover is the hardest part because, it's so subjective, right? A cover. I mean,
Yeah.
there are professionals that do know, okay, this type of book needs this type of cover, but things change over time. You have to look at the trends. So I hired and engaged, I should say. I mean, some people didn't charge me, some friends, but I engaged and hired numerous designers to do covers for it, for mock-ups, and including somebody who did a John Grisham cover when she was at Random House, I think, or Penguin, and
Yeah.
some Anna covers. And so, and I told everybody, look, I am engaging several different cover designers because I want to hedge my bets. I want to have choices. And then,
Right.
from that point forward, I nailed it down and picked one that I was really happy with. And, so that was the hardest part of this whole process for me. But, once you have the cover, there's many print on demand companies out there. So Amazon KDP is one. Book Baby is another. Ingram Spark is another. And so, it's easy to get it into Amazon, but if you do Amazon, you also want another book. Well, if you want to go beyond Amazon, you need another distribution source like Book Baby or Ingram Spark, which has a sister company, Ingram, that can get your books into, like a Barnes and Nobles could order your Books A Million. So my books can be ordered, or this book can be ordered through there. So this goes back to the whole entrepreneur thing,
Yeah.
right? I knew nothing about self-publishing before getting this book out, but I know a lot now. But I had to get over my fear of doing something wrong, of not doing it right, or not being able to learn it, or it was so complex. And believe me, I haven't mastered it, but I've come so far. So again, circling back to what we talked about earlier, don't let fear stop you.
Yes.
I'm so happy I went this path, and it's been very rewarding. And I've been helping some other people with it now.
Good. Well, my biggest curiosity here is, when you had it edited, were you happy with the edits, and weren't you fearful they would change your voice, so to speak?
Well, that's more of a problem, I think, or concern if you go a traditional publishing route and you have an
Okay.
editor who's bought your book at a publishing house and they're like, you need to change this. And, for
Okay.
me, I didn't have, self-publishing, I didn't really have to worry about it. So the editing was when I had the beta readers, I just asked them, look, tell me any place you got confused. Tell me if you see any typo. Tell me if, there's something you had to read twice because it just didn't flow, or, so I got all this stuff back from people, and it helped me pinpoint problems. So I made the choices on how to edit it to get rid of those problems. So that was, I had nobody telling me you got to do it this way, which is another
Okay.
way. I'm happy now. Neil Gaiman, who is, he wrote American Gods. He wrote The Sandman. He's written a lot of books. I didn't discover this quote until after this process with the beta readers, but it's a wonderful quote. And the moment I read it, I agreed with it. It resonated. So, because I think a lot of authors, even the ones that are published traditionally and have big time editors, they have beta readers, right? They have friends who read and that they trust and give input. And he said something like, with his beta readers, like and this is for writers. So if you're writing something, to remember, like when, your beta readers are telling you that, several of them are telling you something's a problem, it's almost always a problem. So even though you don't think it is as a writer and your ego
No.
says it's not, I'm paraphrasing here, but it's almost always a problem. So that's those beta readers see things. He said, but when they tell you how to fix it, they're almost always wrong.
Oh, okay.
Right. So the quote is something to the effect: when beta readers are saying there's something a problem, they're almost always right. But when they're telling you how to fix it, it's almost always wrong. So what's that's saying is, listen to the people that there's a problem, but don't listen to them how to fix it, because only you know how to fix it. And that goes along kind of what we talked about in the book. That's a big theme of my book, is that you can't live your life based on how someone else lives theirs. You can't live your life and try to make it work based on what someone says works for them. You have to experiment. You have to get out there and fail and experiment and learn what works for you, because for the majority of us, it's different, right? What works for you doesn't necessarily work for me. So you just can't, cut and paste or copy and paste. Yeah.
No, I understand. That's good. So that answered that question for sure. Now, I wanted you've kind of already told us how you developed your idea for the book, and when you saw like your book out there and held it in your hand for the first time, and it was finished, how did you feel? What was going through your mind?
It was wonderful. And because that book sat for so long, and it sat for good reason. I was, building a business with my friends and co-partners or partners. And, so it sat for a good reason. I shouldn't have let it sit for so long. I should have always been doing something. But it was a burden. It was a weight on me having that book not be out in the world, and feeling like I had something of value that people would read, and I would hope spur them to, really consider, am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing with my life? Am I living my best life? And that started to weigh on me, and that's part of why it's like I'm gonna get this out there, because this book needs to be out there. If for no other reason, then I can let it go and it can fly and I can work on something else. So it was tremendous holding it in my hands for the first time, because one, had been so many years of work, right? But two, it was a weight lifted because it was finally out there.
How is it? How is it? And how is it helping you now that it's on the stands? Like, it's very inspirational, and it's moving, and it's driven me to keep moving forward. But how is it helping you now that it's out there? Is there anything that's changed for you?
Well, it's it's the thing I'm most proud of. I mean, forget having kids and raising kids and things like that, the accomplishments. I would have said before the book, I finished the book, that, getting my pilot's license was one of the things I was most proud of. But, the book is definitely the thing I'm most proud of. And I think it helps me in one way that, I can point to it for myself and go, look, if you can do that, you can do just about whatever you set your mind to. And so, don't let fear stop you from whatever that next thing is, and go into it, full force. But also, the response to it has been tremendous. One of the books that inspired this book is, let's find it. This book, Richard Bach's Illusions.
Illusions.
You see that? Okay. Yeah, this book I read when I was 20, and it's metaphysical. There's some, mystic magic in it, and I don't know how this book would be if I read it as a 50-year-old, but as a 20-year-old, bright-eyed, optimistic person, I'm still a very optimistic person. I love this book. It changed my life, and it really is about. It's a metaphor, but it's a metaphor on how you can do anything, really, right, that you put your mind to and want to accomplish. And what happened is I looked for years to find a book that would make me feel like this book. after I read
Mm-hmm.
it. That would pump me up. I
Right.
read this book once a year to, reset my mind, toward being able to accomplish anything. But after 20 some years of looking and couldn't find a book that made me feel that way, I'm like, I'm going to write it. So that's what I did, is I
Yeah.
wrote this book. And so very different story, very different story, but there's flight, this is a barnstormer in this book, and there's some barnstorming in this book. Very different story, but it was the inspiration for that. And so one of the things that when Flying Colors first came out, it was a #1 release on Amazon in a few categories, but it was very high in the metaphysical and visionary categories, and like in the top 100, it was, I think it got up to like 29. But what was the best part about it was when it was at number 30. I still have the screenshot, and it was at number 39 going up. It was right next to Richard Bach's Illusions. And
Oh,
so to me, that was just a sign, and it just made me feel so good to see my book next to his.
oh,
Because
absolutely.
anybody who likes Illusions should like Flying Colors, and I want the rest of my books to be in a similar vein. But that really, when it was out there and it being next to Illusions, was a huge boost and, I guess, validation of all that work.
Right. Now, you shared a little bit of your passion about being a pilot and how that kind of started the idea of, you know, the book, writing the book. And
Mm-hmm.
I know you had owned a plane with friends before, but don't now. But do you think now that the book's come out, do you want to revisit that passion and start
Oh,
flying
yes, yes.
again?
Yes. I mean, what happened really is, I had some flying buddies. We bought a plane together, and then we moved up to a nicer plane. But I was writing the book, and it takes a lot of time. And the unfortunate part is, I mean, this for me. There's probably writers out there that are much faster and can just pump it out. But I had to concentrate, and I'm running a business, and I never did it during the day when I'm working on the business. I'm a early morning riser, and anytime I write, it's 5 a.m. to 7 a.m. But it just making it a goal to get that out. It just put a crimp in the flying time, but it's still a passion. I still want to fly, and I'm going to. And I do want a plane. I just would like to grow the business big enough to where it could pay for the plane instead
Yeah.
of going out and doing buying it with people. Even if you get a small plane, they cost quite a bit. So you have to be flying a lot to justify the expense. And for me, I wasn't flying as much as I wanted to, but I definitely want to get back into it.
That's great. Now, in as far as your writing goes, has you're writing another book? How does
Mhm.
it help you? Just even if you're writing in your blog, does that help you every time you write? Just
Yes. For me, writing is a lifeline. It's it, maybe it's better to say it charges my battery,
mm-hmm.
and I can tell a definite difference in how the world feels when I'm not writing versus when I am. Um, One of the things that changed my life was somebody gave me a book called The Artist's Way about 25 years ago. It's by Julia Cameron, and it's for all artists. I mean, painters, sculptors, writers. But she recommended doing this thing called the morning pages. And most people, when they hear about it, they think, "Oh, that's just journaling." It is, but it's a very precise way of journaling, or it's a different way of journaling, I should say. And so, what you do. And this is a phenomenal book. So if you want to be an artist or want to improve, I would suggest it to anybody. But you write in a notebook. Usually in the morning. You could do it in the evening, but and you fill up 3 pages writing longhand. Now the difference, like a lot of people when they journal, they'll write it, they're trying to make it, read well, right? And so, and make it coherent and have it make sense. And this is different, instead of writing and trying to make it sound good, if anybody reads it and staring off into space and getting your words right and write again, you do not let the pen stop. You write as fast as possible for 3 pages. And I've been doing this for years and years and years, and it's never taken me more than 30 minutes to do that. But it's magic what happens, and it's taken me a long time to figure out what it was. So I don't know if you've ever heard of Tim Ferriss, but he's the guy, he does podcasts, very popular. What he says is, his job is to deconstruct world-class performance, right? So he's interviewing the people at the top of their game, whether they're CEOs of companies or fitness people, athletes, entrepreneurs. And he has said on multiple occasions that if there's one common denominator to successful people is that they meditate, right? Now, I don't know about you, Tamarah, but I am not a good meditator. I got too much spinning out there. Now I try, and I can do it a little bit, but it took me a while to realize that, when I was writing in these journals, that's the company Zenergy. So, we have a bunch of journals, and but when I was writing in the journals and doing the morning pages, that is a form of meditation, right? Because you're purging all the stuff in your head, and it's amazing, after, and I didn't realize this, but I've got hundreds of journals filled up doing the morning pages, and after I wrote the first couple of drafts of the book, I didn't even realize it. One day I went back, I'm going to read some of my old morning pages, and because I haven't read them in years, and I was amazed at how many little seeds of ideas were in those morning pages that made it to the book. Not because I went and found them and like, oh, that would be good, because they lodged in my brain, and they somehow made it out into the draft of the book in a better form. So that right there crystallized. I was a huge believer in the morning pages as a form of meditation. After I figured that out, that hey, what's happening for those people who can meditate well, that's happening for me too when I do these morning pages. But when I realized that so much of that book had been, the seeds of the ideas had originated in those morning pages when I was just goofing off and writing as fast as possible, it crystallized for me how important those morning pages were. And I believe, even if you don't want to be an artist, I think morning pages can change your life. And they just help you crystallize your thinking, helps you purge a lot of stuff that gets stuck in your head. And again, if you're great, wonderful, stick with that. But if you're one of those people that have problems meditating and you've never been able, you've tried, you've never been able to really advance with it, I would say give the morning pages a shot. And, pick up Julia Cameron's book. I also have it on my blog. I think one of the blog is 3 concepts every aspiring writer should know, something like that. And there's another one I think is called, why you should keep a journal or something like that. I talk about morning pages on that website. So it's just my name, ChristopherLaney.com.
Right. Well, so, and some of them, they're not always complete sentences. They're just thoughts too, right? Is that
absolutely. You don't, when you do morning pages, you don't worry about typos. Excuse me, you don't worry about grammar. You don't worry about it, anybody reading it, making sense of it, because no one's going to read it. It's just for you, but there's something about that process that spurs creativity in your brain and frees you from some of the trappings that rumination that a lot of us constantly do.
Yeah. No, that's great. I kind of do that when I run. That's my time. I call it meditating, but my ideas are just flowing. Yeah. So
I call it a moving meditation, right?
Oh yeah.
So I'm moving this way, but it happens when you're mowing the yard. It happens when you're running. A lot of times it happens when you're in the shower, doing that thing you've done 1,000, 100,000 times or whatever. And, so mood and meditation, it's real, and it's powerful.
Good, good. I like that. Well, so one last question. What lies ahead of you in business and in writing? When you've already said you have plans for another book? And
Yeah. I mean,
is
for the
there?
business, I'm taking an MIT artificial intelligence course for business strategy. We want to, our artificial intelligence, there's a lot going on these days with it. And, we want to make sure we're incorporating it in our business, using it to its fullest extent, ethically and, responsibly. And also, to be able to help our clients with, anything artificial intelligence, machine learning. It's going to come on strong in the next few years. So we want to be ready for that. As far as the book, writing the next book, and I've got most of the storyline done. I'm writing key scenes, and I'm excited about it. And it'll be in a similar vein as Flying Colors. A lot of people have asked, will there be a sequel to Flying Colors? And the answer is yes. This next book won't be that sequel, but I do want to do one because there's a few things at the end that are a little ambiguous that I want to
I can't wait.
carry into the next book.
I would have had it finished by now, but last week and a half, I've had a big problem with my right eye. And I finally went to that doctor, and I've got on some good drops, but I was having a real hard time. It just watered constantly and burned and all that. So it's kind of getting under control. So I've gotten back to reading it, and I love it. I really do.
Thank you. I
I'm
appreciate
excited.
that.
So I really do. And I think I told you I've given it to a couple of friends. So
Good. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. But I hate to end this today, Chris, and I want to thank you again for being here. Is there anything you want to mention that we didn't or announce that we didn't cover?
Sure. I am. So there's a lot of people that I talk to that, they want to launch a big dream, and they just, after years or, a long while, they've never really made progress on it. So I want to help people do that. So it's in a beta format, kind of like a trial run, but I am doing north of Greensboro, October 8th through October 10th. That's Sunday through a Tuesday, in a very nice meditation, beautiful facility. I'm doing a retreat, and it's a launch your dream thing, and it's a transformative retreat. And I'm working on the details right now. I'm going to have it up on the website, and I'll put it on social media soon. But I'm not charging. It's 2-night accommodations. There's private rooms for people, and you get I think 6 meals with it. So all your meals are included, your accommodations, but there'll be coaching and group sessions of like-minded people that will, help. The whole goal is, okay, here's some distraction-free time, and let's work together. No matter what your dream, it doesn't have to be writing, it could be a business you want to start. Let's work together, and I'll do group coaching sessions and some individual coaching sessions. So you have a plan. When you come out of the retreat, you have a plan to get that dream off the ground. And again, since this is kind of the trial run to work out the kinks, it's at a significantly reduced cost. So again, it's about 30 minutes out north of Greensboro, but people can contact me through my website, ChristopherLaney.com, if they're interested, and I can give them details.
Awesome. I think that sounds great. So I want to thank the viewers too for their continued support, and make sure you share the replay of this interview on your social media sites to help me continue to celebrate Chris and his new book. And you can purchase it at his site, ChristopherLaney.com, and it's also on Amazon. And it's just Flying Colors by Christopher Laney. And stay tuned for more live interviews in Tamarah's Closet. And to your own success, just keep on rocking it. And take care. We'll see you next time.